経験者の限界を彼女知ってるから。あ、これ。
Okay, let's get started. What I want to do today is the last class of this semester. And what I want to do is talk about the final exam. So what I want you to do is just say what you want to focus, just what you want to think about, what you want to focus on the final exam, the kinds of areas. As I say, I'm not looking for you to do any particular study for the final, but I want to show you the areas that where you'll want to focus on in the material, where when you get, so that you can get organized. So when you get the test, you'll see the places in the material where you will want to go, and where you'll. So just to prepare yourself for the exam, and basically I'm going to one of the things I'm going to look for. The things I'm going to look for is your understanding of some of the basic concepts. That's what I'm going to focus on. And first, I want to talk about some of the concepps for some of the areas where we'll ask questions, and some of the things that you might see on the test. Some of you might have the test that I gave last year. I'll send that. You can see what I did. You won't get that. I'll ask something different, but you can get at least a sense of the kind of questions that I asked on last year's final exam. But I assure you, every exam that I give is different. I write it up. So, but you can take a look at that. And one question in particular, and I'll discuss that a little bit later. Some of the kinds of things that I'll be doing. The first thing I want to talk about is the choice of want to think about is the choice of the firm. So thinking about what the firm does. What we want to do is mix, basically, and what we've done in the class is mix a little bit of theory, just some very conceptual things with a little bit something with more practical. So to kind of mix that and to show you that economics is of course theory, but it's also it's theory that's geared towards understanding the real world. So I'm going to start out by talking about the firm. And the thing that I want to emphasize, I'm going to be looking for is your understanding of the basic concepts. Very basic concept for the firm is the price taker. The firm cannot affect the firms in the models that we're doing, that we've gone over this semester. The basic model is that the firm is a price taker. That is, they take the prices of inputs and outputs, the inputs that they use to produce their good, and the output that they produce. They can't control that. So that's a very important that's a very important thing, and the reason is that tells us what that helps us focus on what we want to the choices that the firm makes in this very basic model as to how firms operate in an economy. So that's the very first thing is that they're price takers. Given that they're price takers, well, what are the things that they can do? Well, they can choose their output. They can choose their technology, the technology that they use, and their output level. The technology, of course, tells them technology doesn't. We're not referring to, say, computer technology or high technology, or just the way that the firm uses the technique that the firm uses to produce its output. So the mix of inputs the mix of inputs that are used to produce the output. So the choices are the technology. The firm has the choice of the technology that they use and their output level. And so that is the very important, and given that they're price takers, they're passive in terms of the prices of their inputs and outputs, but given that limitation, they have the freedom to choose their technology and their output level. And what do given that? Well, their objective is to maximize profits. So their objective is to maximize profits. A very important point to remember is that the firms have complete knowledge. Firms have complete knowledge about the technologies in the market, the technologies they can use, so they know exactly if they use a certain mix of labor and capital, how much output they'll get. They know the prices. They're price takers, but they know the prices. So we assume that they know the input prices, the price of labor, the price of capital. We assume that they know the price of the output. We know the price that they can get for their product. We know these are not realistic. These are not realistic assumptions. The real world doesn't quite work that way. But what we're doing, the purpose of all of this is in order to simplify the analysis, that we focus on the most important details of the choices that the firm has to make. What we'll do next semester we'll start to relax. We'll start to relax some of these assumptions. Next semester we'll start looking and seeing what happens if a firm has the power to affect the price of its output. Many firms in the real world, firms have that power. What happens if they have the power to affect the price of their input? To actually affect the price of the labor, how much they pay for their labor, how much they receive for their output. But in the real world, firms may have that power. That's called market power. But we won't be dealing with that this term, and you won't have to worry. Certainly, won't have to worry about that on the final. What you'll have to worry about, I'm going to give you some concepts and a situation in the model where you'll have to use these ideas, where you'll have to keep these ideas clear in your mind, so that to show that you understand the way the model works, and to understand the choice that the firm makes given that. So that's what we're going to do. And the very important point that you'll be that'll ask you to do is that how does the firm maximize profits? Well, it sets marginal cost equals marginal revenue. So marginal cost equals marginal revenue. That's the most basic thing about the behavior of the firm. I want to see that you understand that concept, how it works, and you'll be given a problem that will help you, that will take these concepts, these ideas, and to say, how do you use this concept of the behavior that the firm does in order to maximize its profit, setting marginal cost equals to marginal revenue. So this is the basic behavior of the firm. And of course, a very important part of that is also understanding that when there's multiple inputs, what does the firm, what are the choices that the firm has? The firm maximizes the revenue, the marginal revenue, from the use of the factor. The ratio of that to the price of that factor is equal to the marginal revenue from another factor and the price of that factor, that those ratios are the same. And this is the marginal revenue product of labor over the price of labor equals the marginal revenue product of capital or any other input over the price of capital. That's an important relationship, which is also part of this, that they're doing, when they do that, they're doing the same thing. And then what I'm going to want you to do as part of that is to remember the implied, what I call the duality between inputs and outputs, which you've had in a recent question. You've been asked to explain that. I'm going to want you to be able to show in a problem that you understand that concept, so that you can see, that you can take, to see the relationship, given the assumptions of the relationship between the price of the output and the price of the input. And let's focus on labor, that the price of the output generates the price of an input such as labor, that is the that there's a relationship between those, and that in fact when the firm maximizes its profits based on the price of its output, it's doing the same thing, it's making the same choice in terms of its choice of input. So what I want you to see is that you understand that relationship between the price of the output and the price of the input. So I'll ask you some question. It will likely, you'll have some type of numerical example. You'll be given some kind of approach where you'll need to work out. Given the to figure out, well, what is the relationship between these, between the price of the output and the price of the input, for example, your labor, and how it relates to the marginal revenue product, and the choice of the mix of the inputs, which then works back to the technology that the firm uses. So all of these things, what I want you to understand and show me is that you understand how all of these things are connected. And I think this is a very basic thing that people need to understand. Very basic part of understanding understanding the base, some base concepts of economics. So that's the first thing that will. That'll certainly be, you'll certainly have a question that will revolve around that. Then, what I'll want, and that's going to be, as I say, a little bit more theoretical. Then I'm going to have something, a question, that I used last year. And this is a very practical, and this is one where the type of question, I'll explain what I did last year. What I did was I said, I wanted to give an example where something very real world kind of situation, and then and then to imagine that you were the owner. What I did was I said, well, you're setting up two booths since we're in the summertime, and we're getting to the Matsuri, the summer Matsuri season. I used an example last year where you were running a restaurant. This was particularly, it was a Turkish restaurant, and you had two booths that you were setting up at a Matsuri, and you had a good location and a poor location, and then to say what the revenues, how much you were selling. What was it? Not the falafels, but what was it? The Turkish sandwich.
Kebab.
Kebab, right? Doner kebabs. So they were selling doner kebabs, which I think every Matsuri now in town here, you can find doner kebab. So at any rate, so you're selling doner kebab is for 500 yen. Here's the cost of the inputs. Here's the price of the output. Here is the number of people that are buying per hour. And then you could in that question, you were able to get extra revenue on peak hours that you had to hire a second person. What was the choice that you made for the second person? Whether or not you would open the second booth, but you'd still have to pay for it regardless. So how many hours you would operate the booth. Very basic, and the idea there was to show that you could show how using the concepts in a very practical situation, but making use of the concepts that you've learned in the class. Now I'm telling you this, I'm obviously not going to ask that question in particular, but I'll come up with something, that some type of situation where you'll have it'll be some type of real world situation where you'll have to make those choices, how many people you hire, how many hours they work, whether you open up, it might be a second store or a situation like that. Very real to show you in fact that these concepts apply, that they apply in the real world, that you can use these concepts in order to think about real world problems. So that is, I'm going to do that. So you'll definitely have a problem like that. So I want you to be ready to look for something like that. Then I want to talk about. Then we'll be thinking about the household. Of course, the firm and the household. The basic idea of the household. That the household maximizes utility. Now, one of the things that's of course very different about studying households, studying the behavior of the household and studying the behavior of the firm, is that when we talk about maximizing profits and we talk about inputs and technology and the price of inputs and the price of outputs, all of those are things that we can put our hands around. We can put our fingers on, we can understand very clearly exactly. Those are very concrete ideas. Studying the household is a very different problem. And the reason is that when we talk about household behavior, what we're talking about is the concept of utility. So want there is to look that we're looking at utility. And utility is something, as we've talked about, it's satisfaction, it's the level of happiness that a person, a household realizes from choices that they make, the goods that they consume, the leisure time that they have, where they live, all of those choices that affect the general happiness of a person, we call utility. But what I want to point out, and what will have the question, there'll be a question about the behavior of the household that will revolve around, is that once we get away, we accept that we're talking about something that is very vague, then everything else there's going to be a lot of similarities. And what we want to see is, in fact, that there's, in terms of the model, in terms of the concept, in terms of the way that we think about things as economists, for the household, they actually have a lot of similarities with the firm. And one of those is that the household is a price taker. The household is also a price taker. They're a price taker, and for the firm we have the input and output markets, but the input for the household is income, and that the wage, so the wage that they take the price of labor as a given, they're a price taker, they can't affect that. They can't affect that. they're a price taker in their labor market. That's in their output market, which is the output of their labor and the income that they earn. And in terms of their input market, it's the prices of goods. So they're a price taker in the goods that the household consumes. So in that sense, inputs and outputs, the same kind of idea. The house takes the outputs, produces labor, that's the household's output, and then their input, they input goods to produce the utility that the house experiences, and they're price takers. So very similar in that they something that looks, we can relate to it. We can relate to the idea that there's inputs and outputs of the household, and they're price takers. So even though we're focused on the idea of utility, and utility means something vague, once we get past that, we see that there's very similar, we see some very similar concepts. The objective, of course, is to maximize utility. So they're maximizing. So it's the maximization. So it's the same type. The household maximizes profits. The firm maximizes profits. The household maximizes utility. And get the same way that that firms have a production function. It's the formula that tells us how the firm produces. We have a formula that tells us the utility, the satisfaction that the household gets from consuming goods, and that is the utility function. So the utility function, and so I'm going to have the utility function. Then the utility function tells us the relationship. The production function tells us how the firm takes inputs to produce its output. The utility function tells us how the household takes its inputs in the good that it consumes to produce the level of satisfaction. The output of that is the satisfaction that the household gets from consuming the goods. So, and so the question there'll be a question that will help so that I can see that you understand this basic concepts about price taker in input-output markets in this very similar way as for firms. The utility function takes the place of the production function. The inputs of the utility function is the consumption of goods. The household maximizes, and the utility function tells us how the satisfaction that the household gets from consuming those goods. So so you'll have a question. There'll be some question that I'll be able to see. You'll have to take these concepts and derive the choices and figure out the choices that the household makes. And a very important point of that is that I want to see that you understand that we have the same idea in terms of maximizing behavior, that we see the ratio. That we see the ratio of what's, in this case, from what's consumed and the price of the goods. In this case, the marginal utility that's experienced from consuming some good X to the price of that good is equal to the marginal utility of good Y to the price of Y. So this is when the household maximizes its behavior, that it's doing this. That it's making its choice down to the last measure. Now I wanted to go over, because one of the things that, in terms of that, let me see, I'll have to find this. Let's see if I have the. let's see, trying to find the question where I asked you about, let's see, where is that? The question where I asked you about the consumption of udon and bread. Let's see, that was, oh, here we go. Yeah, right. Now, one of the things that no one got, and not a single person noticed, I don't think that a single person in the class noticed, was that, and I highlighted it, I said, assume that the utility maximizing choice of Sada Udon, that this is her utility maximizing choice. So it's a utility maximizing choice. That's the utility maximizing choice. So the utility maximizing choice, and then we went to the next. So the idea is that the person is maximizing utility in these cases. Well then, if the person is maximizing utility, in fact, all you have to do, once you calculate this ratio here for one of the goods, and you know the price of the other good, then you can calculate the marginal utility of the other good, of the person consuming the other good. I'm going to be looking for you to understand that and show me that this time. As I say, nobody got that the first in that. So this will be an opportunity for you, and this is one of the things that in fact you'll want to learn, is to understand how you can solve problems by using these concepts. When you're presented with something like this, when you're presented with the idea of how people behave, you're going to be doing you're going to be interested in using that using this kind of relationship to understand if something's for missing data, to be able to use that to across the consumption of two goods. So I want you to keep that in mind. As I say, people miss that. They missed that the first time around. I'll certainly want to see that at the end of the term that you're getting that concept. You're getting that concept clear in your mind of this relationship. And as I say, in terms of comparing these, the marginal revenue, in terms of the behavior of the firm, the marginal revenue product of labor over the price of labor equals the marginal revenue product of capital over the price of capital. So in this sense, the relationships are similar, that we're looking for a relationship of something that has to do with an output. This has to do with an output to the price of the input, and the output to the price of the input. And here, an output to the price of the input, and output to the price of the output. So in both cases, both on the household side and the firm side, that we're dealing, again, with similar concepts, even though we're talking about utility. And so utility is something made, but everywhere else, there's an underlying discipline and structure that's similar when we're looking at behavior. So we're looking at human behavior. We've set up the concept of households and firms. We're looking at the behavior of the two and how they behave in the sense of taking inputs and to produce outputs. That it's the same behavior. It's essentially the same behavior, and that we're considering the relationships between the price of the inputs and some output. So I want you to keep that in mind. I'm going to be looking for that. I I haven't decided whether I'm going to talk about elasticity. You've done quite a bit of work on that. I think most people have a pretty good understanding of what elasticities are. I don't think I'm going to ask, I won't ask you anything about calculating them. I think you know. No? Oh, I thought there was something running across the. Oh, okay. I won't ask you to calculate the elasticities, but I might think about some type of concept that you'll use. Anyway, something that I may do that. I haven't decided, but that's not going to be important though. This is a really important stuff. The one also, one thing that I didn't mention, and of course, that as part of this, is the idea of something diminishing marginal something, and I forgot to mention this concept. And this is certainly a very important concept, both from the household side, the diminishing marginal utility, of consuming something. The more we consume of some good, the less marginal utility we get, and the diminishing marginal product output. Diminishing marginal product for any single input that the firm uses, that as they increase the use of that input, they get less and less output for an increase in the use of that input. So these are very important. These are very important concepts. And each one of them produces the diminishing marginal utility, tells us that demand curves are downward sloping. Diminishing marginal product tells us that supply curves are upward sloping. That firms need to get more money. The price needs to rise in order for the firm to increase its output. For the household to consume more goods, holding everything constant, the price has to decline. And these have to do with diminishing marginal utility and diminishing marginal output product. And as I noted, and humorously, the difference between human behavior and animals such as pandas that consume the same food, that their diminishing marginal utility from consuming more is flat. And I'd be curious to see. I don't know if that means if they have a flat marginal utility. Does that also mean that when they produce anything, that also has that's a flat marginal output? I doubt it, which suggests to me that pandas are a species that's in trouble. Anyway, so if you want to get into the use of economics and biology, you may want to think about the implications of such things, which is just a humorous way of saying that if we economists do like to apply our ideas to as many areas as possible, and we really think, and one of the things that we tend to think as economists is that we can explain almost everything, with our models, which probably isn't true, but at least we try hard. So at any rate, but that's something to think about. You'll want to see how we apply, to the degree that we can apply these models to the way the world works. Let's see. We got that. I got the real world example. Then I introduced you the idea of general equilibrium at the very last, and so there will be a question, as I strongly hinted in my last lecture, that there'll be some question for you to use that concept. And I think it's not a very easy one, and I know putting that on a final exam may be a little bit difficult. I haven't done that before. I didn't do it last year. But since I didn't do that on an exercise question, because I'm a nice guy, I'm going to delay that until the final exam. But the important thing there is that what happens is we're taking those concepts. We're taking the concepts of the household and the firm. The household and the firm. We're taking those concepts of the behavior of the firm and the behavior of the household. And what we've done, and our analysis, all of the analysis that we did until last week is what's called a partial equilibrium. So in other words, we're just looking at the effect, an isolated effect of the change in some state of the world, something about a change in the world on either the change in the firm's behavior or the change in the household's behavior. And what general equilibrium does, of course, is it looks at any change, and it tells us how one change in one section of the economy changes everything. And that's the reason why the general equilibrium is important. So you'll want to look at that last chapter and look at that last lecture because I will ask a question, some question that's related to that, so I can see that you understand the putting together the behavior of the household, the behavior of the firm, how that all comes together with the concept of general equilibrium. So, and what I did in the class was a very general, very logical, conceptual approach. We won't use any mathematics there. And I also want to point out, I've tried to limit the use of mathematics, but I also have wanted to introduce the use of mathematics where I think that's useful and important. And certainly one of the areas where I've done that is in the use of the Cobb-Douglas production function. The Cobb-Douglas production function being some Qx equals some L alpha K beta, alpha plus beta, well, it could be equal to 1 or it could be equal to something. At any rate, that these are the basic, there's a lot of basic ideas that come out of the Cobb-Douglas production function. So that's one of the areas that I've introduced math. But I want to point out that for for general equilibrium, I'll just be looking for some type of general discussion so that I can see that you understand the basic concept of how that works and how when you put together the firm's and the household's behavior together, that we get that. Then another area that I'm going to be talking about is our scale economies. Scale economies are very, very important concepts. The scale economies now are starting to, we start to think about how the world really works. Now, one of the things about scale economies is that actually, when we talk about firm behavior, one of the assumptions that we make, and I didn't mention this earlier, but we talk about what's called a U-shaped cost curve. A U-shaped cost curve. A U-shaped cost curve that within that has a range of increasing returns to scale and decreasing returns to scale. So that concept actually appears when we talk about the firm and we talk about the U-shaped the marginal and average cost curve. what we're talking, in the choice where the firm chooses the optimal level of output that in fact we are already talking about areas of increasing and decreasing returns to scale. So what we're going to do here, there'll be a problem, at least one problem, question that will help, that will be dealing with that. And an important part of that, these are in general are when we're talking about for the firm in a U-shaped average cost curve, we're generally talking about within the firm. But now, in terms of scale economies, an important part of that concept is to understand how scale economies are affected outside of the firm and outside of the household. And so we have what are called external economies and external diseconomies. Very important concepts that I've introduced to you, and these are economies that can be related to location, the presence of a natural resource, or what happens when people get together. When people get together, two things can happen. One, you can have external economies, people living close together. It enables them to trade, it enables them to be more productive, and that's an economy. But when the more people that you can have pollution, you can have problems. It's advantages of size and problems with size. You can have pollution is a very important external diseconomy, congestion, pollution, traffic. All of these things are things that are to do with external economies and external diseconomies. So I'm going to have a question that will talk about that. I've already asked you about network externalities. I'm not sure. Most people got it. You know, that's something I'm trying to think about whether or not. I did see that some people did not get the concept yet. A fair number of people probably about 2/3 and half of the class seems to understand quite well. I may think about that. I don't want to emphasize it, but it is something that I may have a small question to talk about network externalities. One of the things that some people made a mistake, at least in the question. I wanted when I was giving you the market size. Some people then broke the market up. Thought that when in reality I wanted you to take the whole the whole market. And some people were struggling just to get the concept, and I'm still not sure that it's widely understood what's going on with that. But I'm still thinking. I'm still thinking about that. Let's see. Environmental. Yeah, I will have some type of real-world problem related to external economies and diseconomies. And then towards the end of the term, I talked about a very important, I think a very important concept in terms of microeconomics, and that's valuing the future. I think it's a very, and through the use of present value, I think the present value is a very important concept. It's a fundamental underpinning of finance, and understanding finance is understanding present value. One of the things that as I looked over your your questions. Some people, it's very clear. I can see that some people have the concepts of present value very clear, but some people are still struggling with it. And here, when we're talking about 1 plus RT equals AO, some people are struggling with how to use this and where things go, and where things go in this problem. For example, the VT refers to some cash flow in the future. So if we want to know the cash flow in the value of the cash flow in the future, we need then we have our cash flow in the present. Now I had people that used this, they ended up reversing things. There were certainly people that reversed these things. So I will want, this is something I really want people in this class, when they leave this class, that they get this straight. And many of you have a clear understanding of it, but enough of you don't that I think I'm going to include something on the final to make sure that I can see that you understand this. So basically, one of the things that I can see that some people are confused about is that how they figure out whether it's the present or the future, and how do you apply that. If we don't know what the present value is and we have a future value, we use it in this form. But if we have a future value, we want to solve for the future value, then your VT equals the A of 0 times the 1 plus R to the T. And people made this, they reversed, some people reversed it. So this is the kind of thing which tells me that there's some people that it's not clear, that this is not clear, and it's very, very important, very, very, very important in order to think clearly about future cash flows. And why is this important? Because understanding how you think clearly about whether it's a present cash flow and a future cash flow is determine how you value things. Another thing that I saw that some people were struggling with is the concept of the interest rate, of the discount. This tells us how we value. The R tells us how we value the future. And in many cases, we're not given this. And in fact, what I had was a problem where I did not give you the R, but I showed you something that you could use as R. And that was in the problem where you won the lottery. You had a 20-year cash flow starting from time 0 and for 19 years thereafter. Some people were struggling. They didn't understand that with the bond, that was the same duration. That a bond of the same duration, which was a risk of a Japanese government. This was of a government bond. That it was the riskless interest rate, the one that you could be certain to get. And that if you're going to have a cash flow, the idea there was you have a cash flow that you know you're going to get, then you're going to want to discount that with at a discount rate, an interest rate that you're sure you're going to get. So I want to make sure that people leave this class with a clear understanding of these concepts, of the concepts of present value. And the reason is it's certainly both an important part of finance. It's an important part of valuing things in the future. And I think it's something that's one of the very practical tools, as I've said, in my own career. It's a very practical tool that you may very, very well be able to use, have the opportunity to use in your own careers, which, believe it or not, soon enough will come soon enough, and you'll get that opportunity. But as I say, I think that would be very important that you understand that. Let's see. And finally, the final thing, I do want, I haven't talked about the labor market, and the labor market, I've talked about, I've given you where the choice of the household, where and it's the allocation of time. The most valuable commodity that we have is time. That's our most valuable commodity in life, is the time that we have. Every day we have 24 hours, and how we choose that, how we choose that time tells us how well we're able to take advantage, and we want to take advantage of that as best that we can. As I say, it's the most important thing that we have. And one of the very important choice, that in terms of thinking about how the household operates, how households operate, and the choices that the household has, that the households have leisure time, work time, and commute time. Now, we focused on leisure and work. I've introduced you the idea of commute. And of course, each one of these adds up to 24 hours of a day. And the choices that people make for each one of these has a major impact on the way that we structure our lives. If we're raising if you're raising a family, if you have children, the children has an impact on your leisure time. It impacts the amount of hours that you choose to work, and they also impact the hours that you commute. For many of you, though, when you get out of school, you may have your first job, and then you're going to be focused on the hours your choice of the hours that you work. How close do you want to get to your job, and how much and when you have your leisure time. But these are all very important because they determine simultaneously the amount of the structure of our home, the way that we live our lives, the amount that we work, where we live. All of these things are affected by that. Now through this I'm going to be using this question to talk about the labor market. I haven't talked a lot about the labor market, so I'm going to bring something related to that into the final exam. So I think that's basically the things I want to cover. Let's see. Now, some people, I just want to make sure, some people, I don't know if I've received, most students have turned everything in. Most people have gotten pretty much everything. A number of you have really have gotten absolutely everything to me. You turned everything on time, and it was done at a very high level. Very excellent, excellent work. Some students, I'm not sure if I've got everything. So if you think that there may be something outstanding in terms of your exercise questions, please contact me as soon as possible. So I want to make sure that everyone gets a chance. I want everyone both to pass the class if they can, and for many of you, well, I think most of you are in pretty good shape. As I say, I'm very impressed with most of you in terms of the quality of work that was done in the exercise questions. Some very, I reduced the number of questions. I think they were more focused than I've had in the past, and I think I've got some good results. I've been very pleased with this class. You're a really hardworking group of students. Some really good stuff that I've seen this semester. Some of you will be moving on you'll be going abroad. Certainly best wishes on that. You'll be going out there and representing your school and your country, and I wish you the best. Please, if there's anything that you would need to contact me while you're there, please feel free to contact me. If there's anything that you may need any assistance, probably not. You'll be going off, but just in case, just to keep that in mind. I certainly hope that for those students that you found that this has been a good introduction and a good preparation for you to make that journey, that adventure abroad. So, and some of you are already doing your own adventure. Then for the rest, those of you that will be coming back next semester, I look forward to seeing you. If you have any, I think I can basically kind of, just make sure, I think I basically have covered the things that I want to, those will be the topics. Those will be the topics, so you want it to go over. I'm going to be posting this lecture on the YouTube channel as with the others, but that'll give you a good sense of what we're going to be doing. It certainly won't be visually very interesting this time, since I was off on the side, but that's the way it worked out. But in fact, it'd probably be the most boring visual ever. But you'll never forget how to spell my name there. So that part I've ensured. So I think I'll wrap that up early. Certainly, if people have any questions, please rush. Put your hand up and rush to get your questions in. But I'm not going to hold my breath.
We'll see.
Very good.
Right.
Okay. So there it is. Thank you.
Thank you.